Welcome to Finding Your Identity in Your Autism Journey, the podcast where we have conversations that matter most. I'm your host, Ruth Cassell, and this show is all about digging deeper into root causes of autism, navigating the uncomfortable conversations that so many of us avoid, and finding clarity in midst of challenges that we face as parents, caregivers, and advocates. We explore stories of hope and real-life struggles and the strength it takes to walk this journey. It isn't about a diagnosis. It's about a journey of understanding, supporting, and truly seeing individuals with autism in our lives and finding our own identities along the way. So whether you are a parent, a professional, or someone just starting to learn, join me as we break down the barriers, share insights, and keep pushing forward in the autism community. Because together, we can navigate this journey, one conversation at a time. Welcome back to Finding Your Identity in Your Autism Journey. Today's episode is titled, Don't React, Listen, Think, Reflect. A full autism speech plus honest reflections. I'm your host, Ruth Cassell. Today, we're going to be doing something a little different and maybe a little uncomfortable, where soundbites dominate the conversation, get hijacked before they even start. We are choosing a different path. I'll be playing the full speech given by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. about autism because too many people are reacting to headlines without hearing the full context. I'll pause at every key moment to offer reflections, but mostly I'm going to let you listen. You don't have to agree with everything. I don't either. But if we want to be real and have that real awareness, it starts here. We listen, we think, and we reflect. Let's dive in to the speech.
ADDM report. Overall, the autism is increasing in prevalence at an alarming rate. The study tests 8-year-olds who were born in 2014. And by the way, these studies are 2 years later than they should be. And one of the things that we're going to do as we move this function to the Administration for a Healthy America, to the chronic disease division, the new chronic disease division, is we are going to have updated real-time data so that people can look at this, so Americans can understand what is happening with chronic disease in this country in real time, and not have to wait 2 years to react. We don't wait 2 years to react to a measles epidemic, and we should not, or any kind of infectious disease. We shouldn't have to do that for diabetes or autism. The ASD prevalence rate in 8-year-olds is now 1 in 31. Shocking. There's an extreme risk for boys. Overall, the risk for boys of getting an autism diagnosis in this country is now 1 in 20. And as high in California, which has the best data collection. So it probably also reflects the national trend, 1 in 12.5 boys. This is part of an unrelenting upward trend. The prevalence 2 years ago was 1 in 36. Since the first ADDM report in 1990, which was 1992 births, autism has increased by a factor of 4.8. That's 480%, I believe. The first ADDM survey was 22 years ago when prevalence was 1 in 150 children. In all the core states, the trend is consistently upward. and most cases now are severe. So about 25% of the kids who are diagnosed with autism are nonverbal, non-toilet trained, and have other stereotypical features, head banging, tactile and light sensitivities, stimming, toe walking, etc. One of the things that I think that we need to move away from today is this ideology that the autism diagnosis, that the autism prevalence increases, the relentless increases, are simply artifacts of better diagnoses, better recognition, or changing diagnostic criteria.
So now we're going to take a pause and we're going to stop right here because I've seen a lot of things online, and this is where I've compiled 5 major things and 5 criticisms that I'm hearing, and it's going both ways. It's either criticism or it's praise. So what I want to do is break this down and give us a chance to listen to the whole thing. We're going to play the whole speech, and I'm going to break down in each part. So this is my first breakdown at the 3-minute mark here. Biggest criticism I'm hearing, the epidemic. You know, RFK Jr. called autism an epidemic. That upset a lot of people. But the CDC says 1 in 31 children are now diagnosed with autism. Whether you like that term or not, that is a dramatic rise. We use epidemic for obesity, opioids, and young mental health. It doesn't mean it's contagious. It means that it's serious. So I actually want to look at it a little bit more than just the scope of the United States. I want to look at a global comparison, because here on this podcast, I have people that are in many different countries, and I would like to take a look at those. And I know RFK Jr. doesn't have any pull out there. You know, I'm just saying I would like to make a comparison to what we're seeing here. So let's do a global comparison. Let's pause for a moment. Take a look at some other countries. The US, we know, is 1 in 31. Canada is 1 in 50. The UK, 1 in 57. France, 1 in 144. Germany, 160. Japan, 130. Sweden, 1 in 100. Why the gap? Is it all diagnostic differences? Maybe. But probably not. These disparities raise important questions. Why is it prevalent in the US? The significantly higher. Are there other factors such as environmental exposures? The diagnostic criteria or healthcare access? It's essential to approach these topics with sensitivity and to commit to understanding and recognizing the rising numbers isn't about instilling fear or assigning blame. It's about acknowledging a trend that warrants attention and action. RFK Jr. is asking why the numbers are exploding in the US. That's not offensive. That's a fair question. So now that we've talked a little bit about this, we're going to go back and we're going to listen a little bit more of the conversation. Again, we're watching the whole video together.
If you look at Table 3 of the ADDM report, it's clear that the rates are real, that they are increasing in the last 10 years, which is the beginning with the first one. Year by year, there is a steady, relentless increase. I want to, because this epidemic denial has become a feature in the mainstream media, and it's based on an industry canard. And obviously, there are people who don't want us to look at environmental exposures. And so I want to just read you some of a little excerpts from some of the older studies. The baseline for autism in this country was established with the largest epidemiological study in history, a study of all 900,000 children in the state of Wisconsin, children under the age of 12. They found 0.7 children had autism in every 10,000. That's less than 1 in 10,000. Today, we're 1 in 31. That study also confirmed the 4-to-1 male to female ratio. There were at that time just over 60 children in Wisconsin with autism. And today it's around 20,000. In 1987, there was another exhaustive study, a peer-reviewed study in North Dakota, set out to count every child in the state with a pervasive developmental disorder, including autism. That study meticulously combed through every record, every diagnosis, and he even conducted in-person assessments of the entire population of 180,000 children under 18. The autism rate they found was 3.3 per 10,000. So that's in line with the 1 in 10,000 that was found in Wisconsin 17 years earlier. For context, today, the last number of 1 in 36 is 83 times higher. In 1987, out of every 1 million kids, 330 were diagnosed with autism. Today, there are 27,777 for every million. If you accept the epidemic denier's narrative, you have to believe that researchers in North Dakota missed 98.8% of the children with autism. That thousands of profoundly disabled children were somehow invisible to doctors, teachers, parents, and even their own study. The same researchers who followed the original cohort for 12 years to double check their number, they went back in 2000 and found that they had missed exactly one child. So doctors and therapists in the past were not stupid. They weren't missing all these cases. The epidemic is real. Between 1959 and 1965, researchers from 14 hospitals associated with major universities undertook the National Collaborative Perinatal Project, tracking 30,000 children from birth to age 8. This was no half-baked survey-based analysis. The study conducted 9 separate screenings covering neurology, psychology, speech, language, hearing, and visual function. Every developmental quirk, anomaly, and disorder was logged with painstaking detail. Autism, a condition characterized by profound impairments in social communication and behavior, would have stood out like a neon sign. There were 14 cases. That's 4.7 per 10,000. So we know what the historic numbers are, and we know what the numbers are today. And it's time for everybody to stop attributing this to this ideology of epidemic denial. In 2009, the California State Legislature charged the Mind Institute at UC Davis because this myth was already becoming pervasive, the myth of epidemic denial, was already becoming pervasive in the mainstream media, the California legislature directed the Mind Institute at UC Davis to answer the question. And Irva Hertz-Pichota was a highly esteemed, revered scientist, neurology, and epidemiologist, came back with a definitive answer. The epidemic is real. Only a very, very small portion of it can be changed to can be charged to better recognition or better diagnostic criteria. I want to say a couple of other things. There are many, many other studies that affirm this. And instead of listening to this canard of epidemic denial, all you have to do is start reading a little science, because the answer is very clear. And this is catastrophic for our country. There's a recent study by Blaxell et al. And a team of other researchers that said that the cost of treating autism in this country by 2035, so within 10 years, will be $1 trillion a year. This is added to already astronomical healthcare costs. And then there's an individual injury. These are kids this is a preventable disease. We know it's an environmental exposure. It has to be. Genes do not cause epidemics. They can provide a vulnerability. You need an environmental toxin. And Irva Hertz-Pichota pointed out that because of this mythology, that the amount of money and resources put into studying genetic causes, which is a dead end, has been historically 10 to 20 times the amount spent by NIH and other agencies to study environmental factors, to study exposures, to study external factors, and that's where we're going to find the answer. This is an individual tragedy as well. Autism destroys families. More importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children. These are children who should not be suffering like this. These are kids who, many of them were fully functional and regressed because of some environmental exposure into autism when they're 2 years old. And these are kids who will never pay taxes. They'll never hold a job. They'll never play baseball. They'll never write a poem. They'll never go out on a date. Many of them will never use a toilet unassisted. And we have to recognize we are doing this to our children, and we need to put an end to it. And I think I'm going to have Walter Zaharodny, who is the most senior researcher for this project for ADDM.
So there's quite a bit to unpack, but I want to talk about, he said, our kids will never. I'm seeing this a lot online. You know, he said they'll never do X, they'll never go on dates, they'll never be potty trained. So let's hang on this for just a moment. This was one of the most viral lines. They'll never hold a job, they'll never pay taxes, they'll never go on a date. Out of context, it sounds harsh, but in context, he was clearly referring to the 25% of children with severe autism, nonverbal, not toilet trained, dependent for life. The harsh truth is, I don't know if my son's going to be there. My son is nonverbal. I do not put limitations on him because I don't believe in that. But I also need to be in reality. He's only 7. He hasn't gone through puberty. I don't know what his life would look like. I don't know. And it's unfair for me to say that. But if he doesn't progress from where he's at, this is my truth. I'm in that 25%. My son is toilet trained. He can go by himself, but he still needs assistance. What do I mean? He'll come back out without clothes on. We still have hurdles that we have to overcome. Can I get him there? I believe I can. But I don't know what hormones and things are going to change as he gets older. I don't know. So this can be my reality. I don't want it to be, and I'm working very hard for him to have and to grow. But I don't know. It's a hard truth. And I know it's not like that for everybody because there's many different levels of autism. I've seen people say, early intervention is key and everything will be okay if you do early intervention. That's not true either. That's not true. So I'm saying that because my son's been in early intervention. I do a lot for my son and I do all these extra things. But sometimes it's not enough. And that's the harsh truth. And you need to be okay with whatever truth is going to come out for your child and for your family and walk in it. Hard truth isn't hate. This isn't about dehumanizing our children. It's about being honest about the severity of some family space. We need a space to talk about all forms of autism, just not the ones that are easy to hear about, ones of the loudest criticism that erupted after RFK Jr.'s speech came from this line: these kids will never hold a job. They'll never pay taxes. They'll never go on a date. When taken out of context, that sounds harsh, even dehumanizing. And I understand why people were hurting and were upset, but I also understand what it meant because I live it every day. Just moments before those words that RFK Jr. specifically was referring to the 25% of children diagnosed with severe autism or profound autism. The children who are nonverbal, that are not toilet trained, unable to feed or dress themselves, and require 24/7 care for life. He wasn't talking about the whole entire autism spectrum. He was speaking to the reality of severe, profound autism. The kind that often gets pushed into the shadows of the mainstream narrative. Now, let's be honest. Are those realities hard to hear? Absolutely they are. But they're already true for so many families, including mine. And sweeping those truths under the rug because they make people feel uncomfortable does a disservice to the children and the caregivers who need the most support. RFK Jr. wasn't saying these kids are worthless. He wasn't saying that they don't deserve loving, joy, or dignity. He was highlighting the facts that families like mine face unique, lifelong challenges that don't fit neatly into a quirky genius image that often dominates the public conversation about autism. We need a space for all stories, from self-advocacy who live independently to children who need round-the-clock care. This is not an either or. It's both. And here are just some resources and data points to help you. Approximately 1 in 4 children with autism are classified as having severe ASD. And I'm going to put this in the show notes. The source is from Journal of Autism and Development Disorders. Another source comes from a study that was done in 2021. It was found for individuals with severe autism. They had significantly lower daily living scores that required full-time support as they were adults. And the source, I will also have it linked in there, is NCBI. Now that we talked a little bit about this portion, I hope that you're understanding that I heard him in the speech say the 25%. We're talking about profound autism. and our voices aren't heard. They are not heard. And we are treated as if a severely autistic is like a level 1, and that is not okay. We need to have an open conversation and have different resources. We all have challenges. If you're on or off the spectrum, it doesn't matter. We all have challenges. So let's go back to the video and listen some more. Again, we're listening to the whole speech.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. I'm here as a long-term autism researcher and a clinical psychologist. I get to wear two hats, one with patients and families, trying to help them get to a diagnosis and to interventions and treatments, but also for the last 20 plus years as the director of the New Jersey Autism Study, which is a CDC-sponsored autism surveillance system. We've monitored autism in New Jersey in concert with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention since 2000. When we began our endeavor with CDC, we expected to do maybe 2 or 3 baseline studies to establish how many children have autism, because it was not expected that autism prevalence would increase. Other childhood disabilities, neurologic disorders do not increase or change over time. But somehow, for some reason, with autism, everything was different. Autism went from being a very unusual, rare disability, which affected, as the secretary said, 1 child in maybe 10,000, to being known in every community, every school district, every center that cares for children with disabilities. Autism is real. It's a true disability. It's not a personality quirky issue. Everything has changed for the individual with autism. And while there's a wide range of expression, it does change the family, and it does inevitably change the community and the society in which we find it. Autism prevalence has increased very dramatically. It's increased in New Jersey, where we have excellent resources and access to services, and it's increased in all the states in the network. It's increased not only by the CDC ATOM network, active surveillance activities, but it's increased according to federal IDEA statistics and information from a multitude of surveys. It is a true increase. There is better awareness of autism, but better awareness of autism cannot be driving disability like autism to increase by 300% in 20 years. That's what we saw in New Jersey. That's what the CDC report of yesterday indicates. And that's what, in my opinion, future reports from epidemiologists will show. The data provided in yesterday's report strongly suggests that not only is this a high point of autism prevalence, but in the future, rates can only be higher. Autism deserves to be treated as a real public health phenomenon, and I would say is an urgent public health crisis. It's not just that we're more astute or perceptive. It's not like 2 or 3 children out of for every 1 with autism has remained invisible. Autism is striking, and the consequences are lifelong. So I would urge everyone to consider the likelihood that autism, whether you call it an epidemic, a tsunami, or a surge of autism, is a real thing that we don't understand, and it must be triggered or caused by environmental or risk factors. We need to address this question seriously because, in my opinion, for the last 20 years, we've collected data but not made real progress in understanding what causes autism, or how to effectively prevent it or treat it effectively. So I urge you to read the report very carefully. I urge you to do something that nobody does and go into the many supplemental tables and see that.
So I paused it again because I want to talk about this. I've also heard he's rejecting the science. Critics say he's rejecting genetics, but listen closely, he didn't. He said genes don't cause epidemics, and he's right. If autism were only genetic, we wouldn't see a wide variety between countries. The CDC agrees that both genetic and environmental factors play a role. RFK Jr. is calling for more research into the environmental piece. That's not infringing. That's science. One of the loudest critics for RFK Jr.'s speech is he claimed that he rejected the science, specifically the idea that autism is primarily genetic. But here's the thing, he didn't reject genetics. What he said, and you can hear it this clearly, it's not genetics alone can explain the skyrocketing increase in autism cases. And honestly, that's not an outlandish claim. It's one that even makes mainstream researchers agree with. Genes don't change that fast. So how can we explain a rise in 1 in 10,000 children in the 1970s to 1 in 31 today? The answer that many researchers often include, the CDC, is that autism is more likely caused by complex interactions of genetic predispositions, such as environmental factors like toxins, pollution, chemical exposure, prenatal complications. I've talked a little bit about this before in a couple other episodes. I'm going to link them in the show notes about my delivery, prenatal, delivery also, plays a role. RFK Jr. wasn't saying this. Yes, genes matter, but if we weren't seeing an explosion of cases, we wouldn't need to be willing to look at what's happening in our environment too. That's not anti-science. That is a call for a deeper investigation. And families like mine, that call matters, because when you are raising a child with profound needs and you see the same patterns again and again, kids developing normally, when regression or struggles with seizures or gut issues, environmental sensitivities, you start to wonder if something more isn't going on. And you want real answers, not politics, and not to be silenced. I will be including my sources and everything in the show notes. I would encourage people to read the full report from the CDC. I am not. Maybe we can do another episode on that and do a whole report on that, or I can do a couple lives on TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, and we can talk about the whole document. I have not made it through the whole document because I have a lot of stuff going on. However, it is a conversation worth having, and it is interesting to read these documents every 2 years when they come out. So I am going to post that in the show notes, the CDC on the causes of autism. There is no one cause of autism. Research suggests that autism develops from a combination of genetics and environmental influences. And I've been saying that all along. I don't believe there's one cause to autism, period. There's a multitude of factors. And I've stated that in previous episodes. And that's just been my experience on my journey. I did not come to a conclusion for that. It's just how I'm helping my son, it's multifaceted. It is not one way. I just wanted to put that in there. It's multifaceted. We need to look at both ways. Look at the effects of the environment on epigenetics, which is not very much talked about. But I think we're getting to that conversation, and epigenetics has been really making a lot of headway in the sciences lately. I think it's a great opportunity to start looking into. Again, I'm going to post these links from the CDC in there. Also, the INH, environmental risk factor study that was done in 2021. Environmental exposures, that includes air pollution, pesticides, heavy metals, have been linked to the increase of autism risk in some studies. And again, I'm going to be linking these studies in the show notes. Scientific American Journal in 2019, genes alone do not account for autism. There's another study. There are several. I could list study after study after study. But at the end of the day, when you're pregnant, there's no test for you to say, oh, they're going to have autism. It's not like Down syndrome where they can detect that there's an extra chromosome. It's not that way when it comes to. Now, there are risk factors that they can have a developmental delay, but it's not gene related. So I'm going to get off that topic for a moment. We're going to go back into the video and we're going to listen to more of this speech. Currently, we are 16, almost 17 minutes in of the 29-minute speech.
To just provide services without understanding the root causes or the true factors at play. So thank you for your attention. I wish we could answer questions.
I think we can. Let me just say one other thing. I referred to a number of studies. There are many, many, many others in the scientific literature that absolutely explode this mythology that this is, that the autism epidemic is not real. If you read the literature, it is absolutely indefensible to continue to promote this. But it doesn't take you to read the literature. It just takes a little common sense. If the epidemic is an artifact, a better diagnostic criteria or better recognition, then why are we not seeing it in older people? Why is this only happening in young people? I asked Walter before we came out here, I said, have you ever seen anybody our age? I'm 71 years old with full-blown autism, head banging, nonverbal, non-toilet trained, stimming, toe walking, these other stereotypical features. Where are these people walking around the mall? You can't find them. They're not in homes. There are no homes for them. There are no institutions for them. Why aren't we seeing them on the street? Anybody can look around and see that this is a canard. And then you have to ask yourself, why is it so pervasive? Why has it been thrown up against us for so many years? And clearly there are industries. This is coming from an environmental toxin. And somebody made a profit by putting that environmental toxin into our air, our water, our medicines, our food. And it's to their benefit to say, to normalize it, to say, this is all normal, it's always been here. But that's not good for our country. And it's not good for the press to not be more inquisitive, to not be more skeptical. And within 3 weeks, and probably we're hoping in 2 weeks, we're going to announce a series of new studies to identify precisely what the environmental toxins are that are causing it. This has not been done before. And we're going to do it in a thorough and comprehensive way. And we're going to get back to with an answer to the American people very, very quickly.
Secretary, great. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So now I paused it again. We're at 19 minutes and 54 seconds into the video that is 29 minutes long. So I wanted to pause here because, again, I watched the whole speech a few days after because I was so busy. I had so much stuff going on. I didn't get to watch it. I had so many people reaching out to me, asking me my thoughts on it. And I was like, honestly, I've seen sound bites. And I don't know. I'm the type of person that I am not going. I don't care what political side you are. I don't care what the topic is about. I don't go off sound bites. I want the whole thing. If I can't have the whole fact or the whole context of something, don't ask me. And if I don't got time to listen to it at that moment, I'm not going to make preassumptions on what I'm hearing on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, because I don't play that. I want facts. I want to hear it come from the horse's mouth. That's me. So one of the things that I kept seeing circulate, and again, I have not, at this point, these are the 5 things that I'm talking about in today's podcast were the things that I seen in other posts. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to find the time to listen to this because I've just been so busy. So when I finally did, I made a list of I just said, I'm just going to choose 5 and go from there. So here's number 4. They were talking about, that got a lot of criticism. He's pushing anti-vax conspiracies again. There's no truth to that. He didn't even mention vaccines in this speech. We're at 19 minutes so far and he has not said it. What he did talk about was toxins such as mold and pesticides and additives. You know, that's what he has. So let's just pause for a second and reflect. You know, I'm going to tell you, since so many people are bringing it up, so many people have brought it up, and you should have seen some of the comments that was in some of these groups that I'm in, and it was, wow. But actually watching the video, he has not said it once. But I've said it. Now, let me be clear. I am not anti-vax. Please get that out of your head. I am not. I myself used to immunize adults. I believe being informed, having that informed consent. But my son had a severe reaction to the DTaP. Yeah. Where I had to fill out a VAERS report. I read the manufacturer insert and it said not to use it for under 50 pounds. The manufacturer refers not to immunize if the person is under 50 pounds. He was 15 months at the time. Do you think he was 50 pounds? No, he wasn't. He was nowhere near that. Nowhere near that. That was a toxin overload. And if a child that can't detox properly, the body suffers from food, whether it be from air, from water, from medicine. We have to be allowed to talk about it. We can say vaccines have value and still talk about the ingredients and timing. One of the loudest accusations flying around social media right now is that RFK Jr. went on another anti-vax rant in this speech. But here's what's wild. Vaccines weren't even mentioned, not once. And if you actually listen, And we're at the 19-minute mark now, close to the end. What he does talk about is toxins. Again, mold, herbicides like glyphosates, pesticides, food additives. I read all the ingredients. It's not just the dyes, there's other ingredients, environmental factors, pollution. And whether you agree with him or not on none of those, none of that is about vaccines. I've talked about this in other episodes, and I'll say it clearly again. I do not believe that vaccines are the sole cause of autism, but I also know what I lived through. My son has severe adverse reaction to the DTaP vaccine when he was 15 months old. I had to fill out a VAERS report. We were rushed to All Children's Hospital, where I thought that my son was going to die that night. And even now, years later, there are no recourse, no validation, and no room in most circles to even talk about without being debunked, dismissed, or even mocked. And I'm here. Something that most people miss. I have a background in pharmacology. I used to immunize adults. I am not anti-vax. I am pro-information, pro-consent. In fact, what shocked me the most is when I pulled out that manufacturer insert for that DTaP. Felt like I made the mistake. I should have known because that's what I did. My son was nowhere near the weight that was deemed by the manufacturer. And yes, that can cause a toxic overload for such a little body. For the children who are struggling with, already that detoxification piece, and that comes down to epigenetics. An environment is already full of chemicals and pollution and processed food, and there's mold exposure, and the body is just overwhelmed in every single direction. This isn't just about one thing, and this is what I've been talking about. It's a storm. It's an environmental attack that's including, in my opinion, vaccines that can contribute to severity levels of autism, especially in children with underlying vulnerabilities already. That is not a conspiracy. That is called biochemistry. And we need a space to have this conversation because the truth is there are thousands of other moms just like me who saw something happen, who we trusted the system, who followed the rules, and who were left with no answers but their own lives' experiences. Whether or not, if you agree with everything that RFK Jr. said, I ask you this. Can we at least stop shaming families who experience trauma after vaccination? It exists. Can we stop pretending that environmental toxins don't deserve scrutiny just because they are politically unconventional? I'm not here to push fear. I'm here to speak up for those who aren't being heard, included the moms. And I was a mom in the ER filling out a VAERS form while praying for my life and my child through the night. Again, I just want to take a time and just reflect on what we've seen so far. I wanted to take notice that something important here is more than just halfway through this speech and not one mention of vaccines. He's talked about toxin exposures, again, pesticides, food additives, ingredients and dyes, chemicals in our air and water. These are real concerns that even mainstream public health institutions have been investigating for decades. But because RFK Jr. passed the, medical decades to review on old narratives and attach it to a momentum where it isn't even relevant. That is not honest reporting. That is what we call clickbait. Let's be clear. Yes, RFK has a long history of vaccine criticism. That's public record. He talks about it before, but this speech wasn't about that. It was about environmental health and the rise of autism, especially severe autism, and the need for deeper investigation. And here, the deep truth. We can't keep silent. You can't silence every conversation about autism causation by yelling anti-vax at the first sign of discomfort. Because when we do that, we shut down parents, caregivers, and researchers who are trying to ask the hard but necessary questions, and those questions might just help our children. Again, I'm going to put this full speech in the show notes below for you guys. I think we should maybe do a whole thing on the CDC. I do believe that is something that we should do. So we're going to go back to the video and we're going to see if we can't finish it out or get closer to the end. Again, we're at 19 minutes. We're at our 29-minute video.
Methylation capacity of the human body. Those contribute to, those dictate, listen, with many people smoke cigarettes and only 1 in 5 died from lung cancer. There were 4 of them that didn't. And those were the ones that had some circumstances, probably genetic, that made them more susceptible to it. And the same is true. We know that that glutathione production, and glutathione is an enzyme that helps the human body excrete metals and toxins. People with low glutathione production are more vulnerable. People with the MTHFR gene, which dictates methylation, are more vulnerable. People with high testosterone are more vulnerable. So there are a lot of genetic vulnerabilities. You need an environmental toxin.
Alex at Fox. Alex.
Hi, Alex Hoff, Fox News. In seeking out an environmental toxin, do you feel that if one or several are detected or put on your radar, do you think it would be the same one causing issues at both ends of the spectrum? Children who struggle with, let's say, sensory issues, all the way to those who are fully care dependent, unable to speak. Would it be the same catalyst in all of those varying conditions, you think?
Well, this kind of studies we're going to do, and you're right, there's a spectrum of injuries, and we don't know. There are studies that look at maternal activation, so that something happens in the womb. There are studies that look at other genetic cause. The issue that we know is genes don't cause epidemics. You need an environmental toxin, and we're going to look at all the potential culprits. We're going to look at mold. We're going to look at food additives. We're going to look at pesticides. We're going to look at air and water and medicines. So, we're going to look at ultrasound, because there's a timeline that, something happened. In fact, Congress said to EPA, ordered EPA to tell us what year the autism epidemic began. The EPA scientists came back and said it happened in 1989. Oh, you have to find a toxin that became ubiquitous around that time period. And that affected every demographic, from Cubans in Key Biscayne to Inuit in Alaska. And that affects boys at a 4-to-1 ratio as girls. there's a limited universe of those, but actually it's quite large. And, Herbert Hertz-Pichota was the one who suggested that, one of the things we have to look at is ultrasound. I don't think that that's probably.
Secretary Kennedy, I was not diagnosed with autism in 1994 when I initially did it. It took me 5 years to get diagnosed later. You also talk about the fact that the numbers increase with Black and Latino people, but your own study says these findings may indicate that improvements in ASD awareness, identification, and access to services in communities among Black and Latino, Hispanic, and API children have improved. Do you think that, are you denying that in the past, Black, Latino, and AAPI people had not been diagnosed, they've been diagnosed with behavioral disorders, they've been disciplined, they've been incarcerated, and now they're finally getting the services that they need?
Oh yeah, and there are small slivers of the autism epidemic, maybe 10% to 25% according to the studies. Highest studies are around 25%. That can be attributed to better recognition and better diagnosis. That means 85% are still, or 75% to 80% are part of an epidemic, and that's too many. And that is what we need to redress.
Walter, do you have something you'd like to add?
There's better recognition of autism and better awareness because there are more children with autism, and the professionals have greater reason to learn from what their experience and to diagnose. I wish the contrary was true, but it's not like better awareness pushes something that's not there. Rather, something that's there is being recognized.
Can you please say your first and last name and outlet before asking a question?
By the way, my name is Eric Garcia, the Independent.
Thank you.
Secretary Kennedy, Amanda Seitz with the Associated Press. Some of the CDC's own research has concluded that there's a genetic link at play with autism. Are you saying today that you don't trust that research or that it was wrong? Could you expand a little bit more on that?
No, there is, we have really good genetic markers now, and they provide a vulnerability. But those genetic markers alone are not going to dictate your destiny. You need an environmental toxin. I mean, there are many genetic markers that dictate the methylation capacity of the human body. Those contribute to, those dictate, listen,
So we're at 25 minutes right now into the speech of the 29-minute speech. And I just want to talk about this piece that I had come across again. Remember, I made my 5 points. And this was one of them where people were saying his words were emotionally harmful. Some said RFK Jr.'s words hurt autistic people and their families, but the thing is, ignoring severe autism doesn't help anyone. Pretending it doesn't exist only isolates families who live it every day. He said, "We see you, we know you are struggling, and we want to understand why." That's not harmful, that's visibility, that's dignity. Hard truths don't dehumanize, they invite compassion and action. One of the final criticisms of RFK Jr.'s speech is that his words were emotionally harmful. That by talking about the struggles of severe autism, he dehumanized autistic individuals or hurt their families. Now, one of the things that he says that autism destroys families, and I know there's been a lot of people say, oh, there's a lot, and even for this podcast today, I was researching it too, but the divorce rate is higher for couples that have children on the spectrum. So divorce without autism is destroying families regardless if there's a child that has autism or not. Now, that statistic is higher. Another way that it can destroy families is that it's before you have your child, you're a two-source income home. Now you're one. So that takes stress and puts it on one, and there's a lot more stress when it comes just to not only to financial, but it also comes to, advocating. That can be stressful too. Getting into services, dealing with and trying to learn and how to best help your child. These are all stress factors, and to say that that's not the case, I don't know. All I can do is speak to me and my experiences. Me and my husband, we're married. Don't think we're going anywhere with that. However, has it put strain on our relationship? 100% yes. Has it changed for our household and financial? 100% yes. Did I have to advocate? Yes. Very hard. So hard that I took the state of Florida to court. Also, my local school board. Yeah. So I'm just saying, it can be devastating in many different ways. Things that I thought I would never have to do, I've had to do just for my child to be seen and get the services that he needs. Now, I want to slow down here because this is where a lot of the pain in the community is surfacing. It is important to recognize that words do matter. I'm not saying they don't. Language does hold power. The autism community includes many different lived experiences, and not one wants to feel erased or devalued. But here's the deep truth, and we need to acknowledge the intense struggles of severe autism. It is not dehumanizing. It's honestly, RFK wasn't saying children with autism are broken or hopeless or worthless even. He was speaking to the brutal reality that many families live every day. Children who are nonverbal and cannot communicate their needs. That doesn't mean give up on them either. Children who aren't toilet trained, at 8 and 10 and even 15 or in their 20s years old. Children with severe self-injurious behavior, aggression, and elopement risk. Adults with profound dependent requiring 24/7 lifelong care. And in our push for positivity, which is important, we sometimes push these realities underground. We make families feel invisible, guilty, or ashamed for talking about the hard parts. RFK Jr.'s speech, whether you agree with every word or not, said something rare. It said to these families, we see you. You are not crazy. You are not alone. And for many of us, that matters more than perfect phrasing. So let's finish out the video.
Sure.
Please go. I've been
No,
waiting.
Nathan,
Give him his chance to speak.
Nathan.
Yes, Nathan Worcester with Epic Times. During that same time period of increasing autism prevalence or diagnoses, there's also been a significant increase in maternal and paternal age. Couldn't that be a significant contributor
With what?
beyond maternal and paternal age?
Yeah, we're going to look at all of that. We're going to look at obesity in the parents. We're going to look at the age of the parents. We're going to look at diabetes in the parents. We're going to look at all of these potential exposures. And because of AI and because of the digitalization of health records and the mass of health records that are now available to us, we can do this much more quickly than has ever been done in the past.
Cheyenne. This is our last question. Thank you.
Do you still pledge to have answers by September, or is that going to be the beginning of this process? And are you open to following the science regardless of whether it confirms some of your expectations or not?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna follow the science no matter what it says, and we will have some of the answers by September. It's going to be an evolving process. We're going to issue grants the way that it's always done to university researchers and others. We're going to remove the taboo. People will know they can research and they can follow the science no matter what it says without any kind of fear that they're going to be censored, that they're going to be gaslighted, that they're going to be silenced, they're going to be defunded, delicensed, and we're going to give them permission to do this research. And then we're going to open it up to the research community, and we're going to task them with certain outcomes, and we're going to have them come and bid on how to do the research. This is all being run by Jay Bhattacharya and I think Martin Goldorf may be also working on this on designing the grant proposals. So it's going to be done by credible scientists, by the most credible scientists from all over the world, and we're going to do it very, very quickly. Yeah, one more question.
Once you identify...
Can you identify yourself?
Oh, sorry, I'm Emma Bevins with Your Self-Care. Once you identify which environmental toxins are causing autism, what do you expect the impact to be on the industries that are causing those? You cited industry as something that would cause it.
I think we're going to figure out a way to make pressure on them to remove it. And I think also, there will be market forces that also exert pressure on them to remove it. And I want to say that I'm very grateful to President Trump, because he tasked me on day one of this job with making this a priority, of finding out what's causing the autism epidemic, and we are going to do it for him. Thank you all very much.
You made it to the end. I hope you are walking away with more clarity, not more confusion today. We chose to listen. Not to the headlines, not to the sound bites, but to the full story. We paused, we thought, we reflected. And for families like mine, it wasn't about politics. This was about being seen. I'm not here to push an agenda. I'm here to say your story matters. Your truth matters. And truth doesn't fear hard conversations. If this episode helped you think deeper, share it. Let's make a space for more honest, compassionate dialogue. Hardened truths aren't hate. Recognizing that some families are overwhelmed, exhausted, or isolated, and struggling with life-threatening behaviors is not emotional harm. Pretending those families do not exist, that is the real harm. If we want real inclusion, real services, real progress, we have to be willing to see the whole spectrum, even the parts that breaks our hearts. I want to take you back to the core of this message. Again, we listen, we think, we reflect, we include all voices, even the uncomfortable ones. This is finding your identity in your autism journey. Until next time, we don't react, we listen, we think, we reflect. Thank you so much for joining me today on finding your identity in your autism journey. I hope you found inspiration, insight, and connection in today's conversation. Remember, you are not alone in this journey. The road may be tough, but every step we take together is one closer to understanding, compassion, and support for our children and families. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, share it with others who might benefit, and leave a review to help spread the word. And as always, I'm here cheering you on, having uncomfortable conversations. Keep advocating, and most importantly, find your identity in this beautiful autism journey. Until next time, take care and stay strong.